Hello. Tonight we journey into one of the oldest and most enduring stories ever told, the Odyssey, Homer's epic of a man trying to find his way home across a restless sea. So, before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this. Wherever you are, feel free to share your location and the local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The walls of Troy have fallen. 10 long years of siege ended in fire and silence. The Greek ships, heavy with plunder and weary men, turn their prows toward home. Among them sails Odysseus, king of Ithaca, cleverest of the Greeks, the one who devised the wooden horse that finally broke the city. He has his share of treasure, his crew intact, and the wind at his back. Home should be close, but it is not. Years pass. The other kings reach their palaces, Agamemnon to his doomed welcome, Menelaus to Sparta's quiet halls, Nestor to Pylos. Yet no word comes of Odysseus. His name fades into rumour, then into absence. On Ithaca, his wife Penelope waits. His son Telemachus grows up without him, and far away, on an island hidden in the folds of the sea, Odysseus himself sits day after day on the same stretch of shore, staring at the same horizon. That island is Ogygia, home of the nymph Calypso. Its beaches are pale sand and black rock. Olive trees grow thick on the slopes behind, and a stream runs clear through ferns and wildflowers. Smoke rises gently from a cave mouth curtained with vines. The air carries salt, cedar, and the faint sweetness of blooming thyme. You can almost feel the warmth of the sun on stone, hear the slow wash of waves below. Calypso is beautiful, immortal, and kind in her way. She has offered Odysseus everything: endless youth, a life without sorrow, her love forever. For 7 years he has lived in her cave, sharing her table, her bed. The gods themselves have allowed it. Hermes will later say that Zeus permits this detention. Yet every morning Odysseus walks to the water's edge alone. He sits on a weathered rock, elbows on knees, and watches the sea stretch empty in every direction. Sometimes tears come, silent and unashamed. The gulls wheel overhead, the sun climbs and descends. Nothing changes. Poseidon remembers. The earth-shaking god has not forgiven the man who blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. That wound, both the physical one in the giant's eye and the deeper wound to divine pride, still burns. As long as Poseidon's anger holds, no favourable wind will carry Odysseus home. The sea itself becomes a barrier, vast and patient, closing around the small island like a hand. On Ogygia there are no seasons of storm. The weather stays mild, the light golden. Time feels soft here, almost weightless. A day can slip into a month without notice. Calypso sings as she moves through her garden. Her voice is low and clear, carrying over the water. Odysseus listens, but his thoughts are elsewhere, on a rocky island far to the west, on a hall filled with smoke and voices he has not heard in 2 decades, on a woman growing older without him. He has tried to leave before. He built a raft once, years earlier, lashing logs together with skill born of long necessity. He pushed it into the surf and sailed until Poseidon's wrath found him waves like mountains, wind that tore the sail to rags. The raft broke apart. Odysseus clung to a beam for days before the currents brought him, half dead, back to these same shores. Calypso nursed him then, patient and tender. He did not try again for a long while. Now he simply waits. The longing has settled deep, no longer sharp but constant, like the sound of the sea itself. He knows the names of every gull that nests on the cliffs. He can predict the exact moment the evening breeze shifts. And still he watches the horizon, as though one day a sail might appear that is meant for him. Far above, on Olympus, the gods observe this quiet captivity. Athena, who has always favored Odysseus for his quick mind, grows restless. Zeus, swayed by her pleas, and perhaps by the sheer length of the man's suffering, finally decides the time has come. A message will soon descend through the clouds, carried by swift Hermes. But here, on the shore of Ogygia, nothing yet disturbs the long silence. The waves roll in, retreat, roll in again. Odysseus sits motionless, the salt wind drying the tears on his face. And somewhere beyond the curve of the world, a household hangs by the slenderest thread, waiting for a man who has not been seen since Troy burned. Ithaca is not a grand island. It is rocky, steep, and poor compared to the rich plains of Argos or the wide harbours of Pylos. Goats outnumber people on its hillsides. The soil is thin, the winds sharp, yet its palace, built high on a ridge, commands a view of the sea in 3 directions. From its courtyard you can watch ships approach long before they reach the shore. For 20 years, that view has offered nothing but empty water. Inside the great hall, the air is thick with smoke, spilled wine, and the low murmur of many voices. Over 100 men fill the benches, suitors from Ithaca itself, and from the nearby islands of Dulichium, Same, and Zacynthus. They came at first as guests, offering sympathy to a queen whose husband was presumed dead. Then they stayed. Now they feast every day on Odysseus's flocks, drain his cellars, and sleep across his floors. Servants move among them with heavy jars and platters, their faces carefully blank. Penelope lives mostly upstairs, in the women's quarters. The rooms are quieter there, lit by small oil lamps and the light that comes through high windows. The floors are worn smooth by generations of feet. Tapestries hang on the walls, scenes of hunting and harvest that Odysseus once brought back from distant voyages. She spends her days at the loom, working on a wide shroud intended, she says, for her father-in-law Laertes when his time comes. The suitors accept this delay. It is a pious task, and custom demands it be finished before she chooses a new husband. Each morning she sits with her maids and weaves. The threads move steadily under her fingers, fine linen, pale as sea foam. By evening a good length is added, but when night falls and the house grows quiet, Penelope sends the maids away. Then, alone in the lamplight, she unpicks every stitch made that day. The shroud never grows longer. Year after year, the same cloth passes back and forth through the loom. It is her silent bargain with time. Downstairs, the suitors grow impatient. Antinous and Eurymachus lead them both proud, both certain they deserve the queen and the kingship that comes with her. They speak openly of Odysseus as dead, lost at sea or slain on some foreign shore. They pressure Telemachus, now 20 years old, to force his mother to choose. The young man stands tall, but his voice still carries the uncertainty of someone who has never known a father's guidance. He listens to their demands in silence, hands clenched at his sides. Telemachus spends much of his time outside the palace. He walks the hills with the goatherds or sits by the harbour watching fishing boats return. The older men on the island remember Odysseus well, the quick smile, the clever plans, the way he could calm a quarrel with a few words. They tell stories to Telemachus when the suitors are not near, but the stories only sharpen the absence. At night he lies awake in his chamber, listening to laughter and music drift up from the hall below. The sound feels like an occupation. The household itself holds together through loyalty and habit. Old Eumaeus, the swineherd, still tends the pigs with care, though many are slaughtered daily for the feasts. The nurse, Euryclea, who bathed Odysseus as a baby, moves slowly through the corridors, keeping order among the servants. They all know the truth of the weaving, though no one speaks it aloud. Penelope's deception gives them time, nothing more. Seasons pass this way. Olive harvest comes and goes. Sheep are shorn, wine pressed, storms batter the coast in winter. The suitors grow bolder, carving their names into the palace tables, breaking jars in drunken games. Telemachus feels the weight of the house pressing on him. He is the only barrier between his mother and their demands, yet he has no real power. Athena watches from afar, noting the young man's growing resolve. One evening, as the sun sets red over the western sea, Telemachus stands alone on the palace roof. The wind carries the smell of wood smoke and roasting meat from below. He looks out at the darkening water, searching for a sail that never appears. In the hall, the suitors call for more wine. Upstairs, Penelope draws the thread back through the loom, undoing the day's work one careful stitch at a time. The thread holds for now. But far across the sea, on a hidden island, a god's messenger is already descending through the clouds, carrying words that will finally loosen the long silence. Hermes touches down on Ogygia at dawn. His winged sandals skim the waves before he steps onto the sand. Calypso greets him in her cave, the fire low and fragrant with cedar. The message from Zeus is brief and clear. Odysseus must be released. The nymph's face falls, but immortals do not defy the king of gods. She promises obedience, though sorrow lingers in her voice. Odysseus hears the news with quiet disbelief. After 7 years of watching the same horizon, freedom feels almost unreal. Calypso helps him fell tall trees on the island's slopes. Together they shape a raft, sturdy beams lashed with cord, a mast stepped firmly, a sail sewn from cloth she provides. He works steadily, the old skills returning to his hands. When the raft is ready, he loads it with food, water, and wine. Calypso gives him a favorable breeze to start his journey. At last he pushes off, the raft rising gently on the swell. Ogygia fades behind him, its olive trees shrinking to a dark line. For 17 days the wind holds fair. The stars guide him westward. The sea is calm, the sun warm on his back. Then, on the 18th day, Poseidon looks down from a high peak in his underwater palace and sees the small raft moving across his domain. Anger rises fresh. He lifts his trident. Clouds gather quickly, the sky darkens, and a storm breaks over the water. Waves tower and crash. The sail tears away. Odysseus clings to the mast as the raft splinters beneath him. For 2 days and nights he is tossed, swallowing salt water, limbs aching with cold. At last the storm eases, and a current carries what remains of the raft toward land. The coast that appears is Thrace, home of the Cicones, allies of Troy during the war. Odysseus and his men, those who survived the storm, drag the wreckage ashore. They are exhausted, but the sight of a town nearby stirs old habits of war. Against better judgment, Odysseus agrees to a raid. They attack at dawn, driving off the defenders, taking cattle, wine, and women as spoils. The men feast on the beach, roasting meat and drinking deeply. The Cicones who escaped ride inland and return with reinforcements, harder fighters from the interior. They fall on the Greeks suddenly. The beach becomes chaos. Odysseus calls for retreat, but many of his men are slow to leave the plunder. 72 are killed before the survivors reach the ships. They row away heavy-hearted, the wind carrying the smell of blood and smoke behind them. The fleet sails south, mourning the first losses. Storms drive them further off course. After days of grey skies and rough water, they sight a low coast fringed with reeds. The land looks gentle, almost inviting. Odysseus sends a small party ashore to find fresh water and learn who lives there. The inhabitants are the Lotus eaters. They greet the Greeks peacefully, offering food sweet, honey-like fruit from a flowering plant. The men eat and immediately feel a deep calm settle over them. Cares fade. The war, the long journey, even the thought of home grow distant and unimportant. When Odysseus goes to fetch them back, he finds them sitting idly among the flowers, smiling, unwilling to move. He drags them to the ships by force, tying them beneath the benches until the longing passes. As the coast recedes, the men weep not for what they have lost, but for the peace they are leaving behind. The ships sail on, fewer now, quieter. The taste of the lotus lingers in memory, a soft warning of how easily the will to go home can slip away. And ahead, unknown to them, waits a far greater danger, a one-eyed giant in a shadowed cave. The fleet sails on through calm days and starry nights. Land appears again, a small uninhabited island with good water, wild goats in abundance, and meadows perfect for resting. Odysseus and his men hunt, feast, and sleep under open skies. From this island they can see smoke rising from a larger land nearby, and at night they hear the faint lowing of sheep. Curiosity draws Odysseus. He chooses one ship, his own, and 12 of his best men to explore the coast across the water. They row over at dusk, carrying empty wineskins and a skin of strong, unmixed wine given to Odysseus long ago by a priest of Apollo at Troy. The larger land is rugged, thick with oak and pine. They follow a path upward and come upon a vast cave near the hilltop. Its mouth is wide, fenced with huge stones that no ordinary man could move. Inside are pens full of lambs and kids, racks of cheese, pails brimming with milk. The crew begs to take some cheese and young animals, then hurry back to the ship. Odysseus refuses. He wants to see the owner, to receive the guest gifts that custom demands. They light a fire and wait, eating some of the cheese to ease their hunger. Dusk deepens, heavy footsteps approach. The ground trembles faintly. A massive figure fills the cave entrance. Polyphemus, a Cyclops, son of Poseidon. He stands twice the height of a man, broad as an ox, with a single eye in the center of his forehead. In his arms he carries a load of firewood that would take a dozen men to lift. He drives his flock inside ewes and rams bleating, then lifts a stone slab the size of a ship's mast and seals the entrance. The cave falls into shadow, lit only by the fire's glow and the faint light from cracks high above. Polyphemus milks his ewes methodically, setting aside half the milk for cheese. Only then does he notice the men. His voice rumbles like stones rolling downhill. "Strangers, who are you? Traders or pirates?" Odysseus steps forward and answers carefully. They are Greeks returning from Troy, storm-tossed, seeking hospitality. He invokes Zeus, protector of guests. The Cyclops laughs, a sound without warmth. He claims no fear of Zeus or any god. Then, without warning, he snatches 2 of the crew, dashes them against the ground, and eats them bones, flesh, marrow, all. The rest huddle in terror as he drinks milk, stretches out on the floor, and falls asleep among his sheep. Morning comes slowly. Polyphemus wakes, milks again, then seizes 2 more men for his breakfast. He moves the stone, drives the flock out to pasture, and seals the cave once more. The survivors are left in darkness with the remains of their comrades. Odysseus forces himself to think. Running is impossible, the stone is too heavy. Fighting is useless. The Cyclops is too strong. They search the cave and find a massive olive wood club, longer than a ship's mast, still green and heavy. Odysseus cuts a length, sharpens one end to a point, and hardens it in the fire. They hide it under piles of dung. Evening returns. Polyphemus drives the flock in, seals the entrance, milks, and eats 2 more men. Odysseus approaches with a bowl of the dark wine. The Cyclops drinks greedily 3 bowls full, and the strong wine loosens his tongue. He asks Odysseus' name. Odysseus replies, "My name is Nobody." Polyphemus laughs again and promises that, in return for the wine, he will eat nobody last. Then he falls into a deep, drunken sleep. The men gather around the fire. Odysseus heats the sharpened stake until it glows. They lift it together and drive it into the single eye. Polyphemus wakes with a roar that shakes the cave walls. He pulls the stake free. Blood and fluid pour down his face. He bellows for help, crying that nobody is killing him. Other Cyclopes gather outside the stone, asking what troubles him. "Nobody is attacking me if I am alone. It must be a sickness from Zeus." Hearing this, they tell him to pray and go back to their own caves. Blind and raging, Polyphemus gropes along the walls. He moves the stone at dawn to let his flock out, feeling each animal's back to catch any man clinging to the fleece. Odysseus has already planned for this. He ties his remaining men 3 to a ram under the bellies of the largest beasts, using woven twigs. He himself clings beneath the biggest ram, gripping its wool. The flock files out slowly. Polyphemus strokes each one, speaking gently to his favorite ram, wondering why it lingers at the rear today. At last the men reach the open air. They untie themselves and run to the ship, driving some of the best sheep with them. As they row away, Odysseus cannot hold his silence. From the stern he shouts back, telling the Cyclops his true name: Odysseus, son of Laertes, sacker of cities. Polyphemus lifts his hands toward the sky and prays to his father Poseidon. He asks that Odysseus never reach home, or, if fate decrees he must, then let him arrive late, alone, on a foreign ship, and find trouble waiting. The prayer is heard. Poseidon will remember. The ship rejoins the rest of the fleet on the smaller island. They divide the sheep, sacrifice the best ram to Zeus, and feast. But no joy comes with the meal. 6 men are gone from one ship alone, and the sea ahead now carries a heavier weight. Odysseus looks back at the distant coastline, where a blind giant sits on a hilltop, still facing the water. Listening, they sail on, the wind steady at their backs for now. Ahead lie islands of enchantment and danger, and farther still, the quiet halls of the dead. But first, another temptation waits an island where wind itself is kept in a bag, and human curiosity proves stronger than caution. The fleet leaves the land of the Cyclopes behind. The wind blows steady from the north, carrying them swiftly southward. After several days, they reach a floating island, Aeolia, home of Aeolus, keeper of the winds. He welcomes Odysseus warmly, entertaining the Greeks for a full month in his palace of bronze walls. When they prepare to leave, Aeolus gives Odysseus a great leather bag, bound with silver cord. Inside, he has imprisoned all the winds that could hinder their journey. Only the gentle west wind is left free to fill their sails and speed them home. For 9 days and nights they sail without stop. On the 10th dawn, Ithaca appears a dark line on the horizon, smoke rising from its hearths. The men shout with joy. Odysseus, exhausted from steering, finally lies down to sleep, trusting his crew to watch. But suspicion has grown among them. They whisper that the leather bag holds gold and silver, a private gift from Aeolus to their captain. While Odysseus sleeps, they untie the cord. The winds rush out in a howling storm. The ships are driven backward, tossed for days until, battered and despairing, they return to Aeolia. Aeolus receives them coldly now. He says the gods clearly hate Odysseus, and he will give no further help. The men row away in silence, hearts heavy. 6 days of steady rowing bring them to another land, tall cliffs, thick forests, and a deep bay. Odysseus sends half his men under Eurylochus to explore. They follow a path through oak woods and come upon a clearing. In its center stands a fine stone house, surrounded by wolves and mountain lions that prowl but do not attack. Instead they fawn like dogs, tails wagging. Smoke rises from the roof, and a woman's voice sings inside, clear and low, accompanied by the rhythmic thump of a loom. Eurylochus waits outside with caution while his companions approach. The door opens. Circe greets them, golden hair, bright eyes, a goddess in beauty. She invites them in, mixes wine in a great bowl, adds barley and honey, and secretly stirs in a drug. The men drink gladly. As soon as the cups are empty, she touches each with her wand. Instantly they change heads, bodies, bristles, and voices become those of pigs. She drives them into pens and throws acorns and mast for them to eat. Only Eurylochus, who stayed back, sees this and runs to the ships in terror. Odysseus hears the news and arms himself with sword and spear. He sets out alone up the same path. On the way, Hermes meets him in the form of a young man. The god gives him a black-rooted herb called moly white flower, hard for mortals to pull, and instructs him. When Circe strikes with her wand, draw the sword and rush at her as if to kill. She will yield. Odysseus takes the herb and continues. Circe welcomes him as she did the others warm wine, a comfortable chair by the fire. He drinks, but the moly protects him. When she touches him with the wand and speaks the spell, nothing happens. He leaps up, sword drawn, and forces her back. She cries out in surprise, recognizing a man immune to her power. She begs for mercy, offering her bed and friendship. Odysseus makes her swear a great oath by the gods that she will harm neither him nor his men. Only then does he sheath the sword. Circe releases the pigs from the pens, anoints them with another drug, and they become men again, younger looking, taller, handsomer than before. Tears and embraces fill the hall. Circe prepares a feast. Roasted meat, bread, wine in abundance. The men eat and drink, but Odysseus sits apart, thinking of the ships and the journey ahead. Circe sees this and tells him he will have no rest until he brings the rest of his companions to her house. He agrees. The remaining crews are brought ashore. For many days they live in comfort on Aea. Circe's house is spacious, the tables always full. Servants, nymphs of springs and groves attend them. The weather stays mild. They hunt in the forests, bathe in clear streams, sleep on soft beds. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months. No one speaks of leaving. The memory of storms, monsters, and lost comrades fades in the warmth of the hearth and Circe's company. Odysseus shares her bed and her table. She is clever, knowledgeable in herbs and stars, and kind in her way. Time passes without notice. A full year slips by, one harvest, one winter, one spring again. The men grow content, almost forgetting Ithaca. It is Odysseus who finally stirs. One evening, as they sit after supper, he speaks quietly to his companions. They have rested long enough. Their families wait. They must sail. The men agree, though some with reluctance. Circe does not oppose them. She helps prepare the ships, gives provisions and fresh water. But before they leave, She takes Odysseus aside and tells him what he must do next. Sail to the edge of the world, to the house of Hades, and consult the spirit of the prophet Tiresias. Only he can tell Odysseus how to reach home. The words fall heavy. The crew listens in silence when he repeats them. At dawn they launch the ship. Circe stands on the shore, watching until they are out of sight. The island fades behind them, its forests and stone house growing small. No one looks back for long. The sea ahead is wide and quiet now, the wind gentle. But their course leads not westward toward home, but north and west, toward a place where the sun does not shine and the living rarely go. And there, in the dim groves of Persephone, voices from the past wait to speak across the boundary of death. The ship sails northward through grey waters. The sun grows pale, the air colder. Land appears on the horizon, a low, desolate coast where the river Oceanus meets the sea. Circe's instructions are clear. Beach the ship at the grove sacred to Persephone, where tall poplars and willows grow. There, two rivers join the flaming Pyriphlegethon and the wailing Cocytus, pouring into the Acheron. Nearby runs the silent Styx. Odysseus orders the crew to land. They draw the black-sailed ship onto the shingle. The men stay aboard, uneasy in this place where no birds sing and the light feels thin. Odysseus takes a companion, steps onto the shore, and walks inland carrying a bronze sword and a bowl for offerings. He finds the spot Circe described, a rock outcrop at the meeting of the waters. With the sword he digs a pit 1 cubit square. Around it he pours libations, first milk and honey, then sweet wine, then water, and sprinkles white barley over all. He prays to the dead, promising richer sacrifices when he returns to Ithaca. A barren heifer, heaps of treasure on the pyre, and for Tiresias alone, a black ram. Then he slits the throats of a black ram and a black ewe provided by Circe. Dark blood flows into the pit. At once the air stirs. Shades rise from Erebus, pale, fluttering, soundless at first. Young brides, unmarried youths, old men worn by sorrow, warriors still wearing blood-stained armor. They gather around the blood, faces eager. But Odysseus stands guard with drawn sword, keeping them back until Tiresias comes. The first shade he recognizes is Elpenor, one of his own crew, the youngest, not much of a fighter. Only days earlier, drunk from Circe's wine, he had climbed to the roof of her house to sleep in the cool air. At dawn he forgot where he was, stepped backward, and fell. His neck broke on the stones below. The crew left in haste and never buried him. Now his shade approaches, pleading. He begs Odysseus to return to Aea, burn his body with armor and ore, and raise a mound by the shore so his name is not forgotten. Odysseus promises he will do it. Next comes the shade he waits for, Tiresias, the Theban prophet, blind in life but granted understanding in death. The shade drinks from the blood and speaks clearly. The way home is still long, he says. Poseidon's anger endures because of the Cyclops. If Odysseus and his men harm nothing sacred on the island of Thrinacia, where the cattle of the sun graze, they may yet reach Ithaca, though with loss. If they touch the cattle, the ships and crew will perish, and Odysseus will come home alone, late, in hardship, to find proud men consuming his substance. Even then troubles will remain, but he can end them and later find a gentle death far from the sea. The prophecy ends. Tiresias withdraws. Now Odysseus allows the shades to approach one by one. His mother, Anticlea, comes, whom he left alive when he sailed for Troy. She drinks the blood and knows him. Her words are quiet, filled with sorrow. She tells him of Ithaca, Penelope still waits faithfully in the hall, grieving night and day. Telemachus tends the estates and sits in council, honoured. Laertes lives apart on his farm, sleeping on the ground in winter, wearing rags, heartsick for his son. She herself died of longing, worn away by worry for Odysseus. He reaches out 3 times to embrace her, but each time his arms close on nothing, only mist. She explains that the dead have no substance. Their sinews no longer hold flesh and bone. The shade fades, leaving him in deeper grief than before. A procession of women follows mothers and wives of heroes sent by Persephone. Odysseus sees them, notes their names, but does not linger. Then the shades of warriors gather. Agamemnon approaches, surrounded by the men slaughtered with him at his homecoming feast. He drinks and speaks bitterly. No glorious death in battle for him, only betrayal by his wife and her lover. He warns Odysseus never to trust too fully, even at home. Better to arrive in secret, he says. The shade of Achilles comes next, tall, swift-footed, even in death. Odysseus greets him with praise. In life the most honoured of Greeks, now ruler among the dead. Achilles answers sharply. He would rather be a poor man's hired labourer on earth, with breath in his body, than king over all the perished dead. Glory means little here. He asks for news of his son Neoptolemus. Odysseus tells him the boy fought bravely at Troy, wise in counsel and fierce in battle. Achilles' shade strides away satisfied, footsteps silent on the asphodel meadow. Ajax, son of Telamon, stands apart, the only shade that will not approach. He still nurses anger from the contest over Achilles' armour, awarded to Odysseus. Odysseus speaks gently, regretting the quarrel, but Ajax turns away without a word. More shades press forward. Odysseus sees old comrades, Patroclus, Antilochus, others fallen at Troy. He sees heroes of earlier times, Minos judging the dead, Orion hunting ghostly beasts, Tantalus forever reaching for fruit and water, Tityos torn by vultures, Sisyphus pushing his stone. The punishments are distant, half seen in the gloom. But the crowd of shades grows thicker, their voices rising like wings. Fear takes hold. Odysseus hurries back to the ship, orders the crew to cast off and row. They pull hard for open water, leaving the pit and the gathering dead behind. The ship turns south again, retracing the way to Aea. First, they must keep the promise to Elpenor, burn his body, raise his mound. Then Circe will give further counsel. As they sail, the words of the shades linger. Achilles' scorn for glory after death, Agamemnon's warning of betrayal, his mother's quiet sorrow. The veil between living and dead feels thinner now, the boundary fragile. Odysseus sits at the stern, watching the grey water slide past. The crew rows in silence. They have seen what few living men see and returned. Ahead lies the island of the sun, and choices that will test everything Tiresias foretold. But before the final temptations of the living world, another song will rise across the water, beautiful, deadly, promising all knowledge in exchange for life itself. The ship leaves Aea for the second time. Circe stands alone on the shore until the sail disappears. She has given detailed warnings of what lies ahead. First, the island of the Sirens, creatures who sing from a flowering meadow, luring sailors to their deaths on the rocks. Then, a narrow strait with only 2 possible paths. One past Charybdis, a monster that swallows the sea 3 times a day. The other past Scylla, who plucks men from decks with her long necks. No ship passes unharmed, Circe says, but Scylla is the lesser evil, better to lose 6 men than all. The crew rows steadily southward. The sea stays calm, the sky clear. After several days, a low island appears, green with meadows. Even at a distance, a song carries over the water clear, sweet voices blending in perfect harmony. The words promise everything a sailor longs for: knowledge of all that happened at Troy, news of home, rest from wandering. The sound settles deep in the chest, warm and irresistible. Odysseus remembers Circe's advice. He takes a large ball of beeswax, kneads it soft in his hands, and cuts it into pieces. He stops every man's ears firmly with wax, so the song cannot reach them. Then he orders them to lash him to the mast, arms and feet bound tight, ropes knotted so he cannot loosen them himself. He tells them, row past the island quickly, and if he begs or commands them to release him, tie him even tighter. The ship approaches. The song grows louder, filling the air like sunlight. The crew rows with steady strokes, faces blank, hearing nothing. Odysseus alone hears every note. The voices call his name, praise his cunning at Troy, offer to tell him the future and all hidden things. The pull is almost physical. He strains against the ropes, shouts to be set free, eyes fixed on the meadow where two figures sit among scattered bones and withered corpses. The crew obeys orders. They add more ropes, row harder. The island slides past. Slowly the song fades behind them. When it is gone, Odysseus slumps against the mast, exhausted. The men remove the wax from their ears and untie him. No one speaks for a long while. The strait comes into view 2 days later. High cliffs rise on both sides, close enough that a man could shoot an arrow from one to the other. Mist hangs in the channel. The water moves strangely. On the left cliff, a dark cave yawns halfway up the rock. Inside, Scylla waits 12 dangling feet, 6 long necks, each ending in a head with 3 rows of teeth. Her bark is like hounds, but she herself stays hidden in shadow. On the right side, beneath the other cliff, grows a wild fig tree. Below it, Charybdis sucks in the sea, black water swirling down in a vast whirlpool, exposing the seabed, then belching it back in foam. Odysseus weighs Circe's words again. He arms himself with helmet, shield, and 2 spears, thinking to fight Scylla if she appears. He does not tell the crew about her, only warns them to keep to the left cliff and row with all strength to avoid the whirlpool. They nod, trusting him. The ship enters the strait. The men pull hard, eyes fixed on the fig tree and the churning water beneath it. Odysseus stands in the prow, watching the cave. Suddenly Scylla strikes. 6 heads dart out faster than thought. Each seizes a man from the deck, the nearest and strongest. The victims scream as they are lifted high, arms reaching down toward the ship, calling Odysseus's name. He watches helpless while the heads retreat into the cave. The cries echo off the cliffs, then stop. The ship clears the strait moments later. Charybdis has taken nothing but a little water over the rails. 6 benches are empty now. The survivors row on in silence, faces pale, avoiding the bloodstains on the deck. Odysseus puts away his useless spears and sits among them. No one blames him aloud, but the loss settles heavy. The wind freshens from the north. They sail for days without sight of land, rations growing short. At last a low island appears, ringed with gentle beaches. Herds of fine cattle graze in broad meadows, and flocks of sheep wander the slopes. The sun shines warm. The air carries the smell of grass. The men beach the ship gladly, cook what little remains, and sleep. When morning comes, they realize the wind has shifted and blows strongly against them. Storm clouds gather. They are trapped on the island with no way to leave. The cattle look healthy and numerous, clearly sacred, for no herdsman tends them, yet they are fat and sleek. Odysseus recognizes the place from Tiresias's warning. Thrinacia, island of the sun god Helios. He gathers the crew, and makes them swear a solemn oath. Touch nothing of the cattle or sheep, live only on the provisions Circe gave. They agree reluctantly. The storm lasts a full month. Supplies run out. Hunger gnaws. The men fish and hunt birds, but find little. And in that long delay, temptation grows stronger than any oath, leading to the final, fatal mistake. The storm holds the ship on Thrinacia for a full month. Winds howl from every direction except the one that would let them leave. The men fish with hooks and lines, gather shellfish along the shore, hunt small birds in the meadows, but the island offers little. Hunger sharpens daily. The cattle of Helios graze everywhere, fat and sleek, untouched by any herdsman. 7 herds of cows, 7 of sheep, 50 in each numbers that never seem to change. They low softly at dusk, moving across the grass as though the weather means nothing to them. Odysseus keeps the crew to their oath as long as he can. He walks the island alone each day, searching for signs the wind might shift. One evening he climbs a high ridge, exhausted and anxious. There he prays to the gods for help, then lies down in a sheltered spot and falls into deep sleep. While he sleeps, Eurylochus gathers the men around the beached ship. He speaks plainly. They are starving. Circe's provisions are gone. The sacred cattle are here in plenty, and Helios has wealth enough among the gods he will not miss a few. Better to eat and risk divine anger than die slowly on this shore. If they must pay later, they can sacrifice to Helios when they reach Ithaca. The others listen, stomachs empty, and agree. They sharpen bronze knives, drive off the finest cows from the nearest herd, and slaughter 6. They skin and butcher them carefully, cutting away the thighs to burn as offering, wrapping the pieces in fat and sprinkling barley over, though they have no wine left. They pour water instead and pray to Helios for forgiveness. Odysseus wakes at dusk to the smell of roasting meat. He hurries down the ridge and sees what they have done. Anger and fear rise together. He warns them again of Tiresias's words, of Circe's clear command. Touch nothing here, or lose everything. But the meat is already cooking. The men eat heartily for the first time in weeks, and for 6 days more they slaughter and feast, while Odysseus stands apart, refusing to share. On the 7th day, the wind shifts at last. A gentle south breeze fills the sail. The crew launches the ship gladly, stomachs full, spirits high. They row out from the bay and set course westward. The island shrinks behind them. Helios learns quickly. He ascends to Olympus and stands before Zeus, voice hard with anger. Odysseus's men have killed his cattle. If justice is not done, he will take his light down to Hades and shine among the dead instead. Zeus promises retribution. Dark clouds gather as the ship sails on calm water. 6 days pass without trouble. On the 7th night, the sky changes. The wind dies suddenly. The sea grows glassy. Then, from the south, a steady gale rises. The same wind that brought them safely off the island now turns against them. Zeus sends thunder and lightning. A bolt strikes the mast, splintering it. Smoke and sulfur fill the air. The ship spins helplessly. Another bolt, and the hull cracks. Waves pour in. The men try to bail, to repair, but panic takes hold. One by one they are swept overboard or crushed by falling spars. Odysseus cuts away the broken mast and keel with his sword, lashes them together with a rawhide rope. As the ship sinks beneath him, he clings to this makeshift raft. The sea calms almost at once. As though satisfied, no trace remains of the crew or the vessel, only scattered wreckage drifting under clearing skies. Odysseus is alone now. The water stretches empty in every direction. Days pass. He drifts with the currents, thirsty under the sun, cold at night. Hunger returns, but there is nothing to eat. He speaks aloud sometimes, just to hear a human voice, then falls silent again. The loneliness is deeper than any he has known. After 9 days, the raft nears a distant shore. Ahead lies Ogygia once more. No, a different island, but rescue of a kind. The currents carry him toward the mouth of a river. He lets go of the beams and swims weakly for land. But that land belongs to the Phaeacians, a people favored by the gods, whose ships move like thought and whose king will soon hear a stranger's tale by the hearth. Odysseus lets go of the broken mast and keel. The river current carries him gently toward the shore. He swims the last strokes with the little strength left, then crawls onto soft sand at the mouth of a quiet stream. Reeds grow thick along the banks. Olive trees shade the water. Exhausted, he digs a hollow in warm sand, piles dry leaves over himself, and sleeps like the dead. Morning comes with voices, young women laughing near the water. Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous, has come with her maids to wash the palace linens. They spread the bright cloth on the pebbles to dry, then play a game with a ball. A throw goes wide. The ball lands near the sleeping stranger. Odysseus wakes to their startled cries. He is naked, crusted with salt, hair matted. He breaks off an olive branch to cover himself and steps forward carefully, voice hoarse from the sea. He speaks with respect, praising the girl's beauty and asking for mercy and clothing. Nausicaa does not run. She sees the bearing of a man born to command, even in ruin. She orders her maids to bring a tunic and cloak, olive oil for washing, food and wine. Odysseus bathes in the river, anoints himself, and puts on the clean garments. When he returns, the maids draw back in wonder. He stands tall again, the gods' favour visible in his face and form. Nausicaa gives him directions to the city. Follow the road through farms and orchards. Wait outside the walls until he reaches the palace, then ask for Queen Arete. Her word carries great weight with Alcinous. She leaves with her maids in the mule wagon, linens folded. Glancing back once, Odysseus walks alone through the rich land of Syria. Fields of grain, vineyards heavy with grapes, orchards of fig and pomegranate. The people live without want. Their ships need no pilots, the vessels know men's thoughts and carry them safely across the sea. He reaches the city at dusk. The harbour is full of those famous ships, drawn up on the shore. The palace rises above, built of bronze and gold, with silver doors and golden watchdogs that never age. Inside, a feast is in progress. Alcinous and Arete sit at the high table. Guests fill the benches. Odysseus enters veiled in mist by Athena, so no one notices until he reaches the hearth. There he throws off the mist, kneels, and places his hands on Arete's knees in supplication. Silence falls. He asks only for passage home. He has suffered long, lost everything. The king raises him kindly, gives him a chair beside his own son, orders food and wine. The bard Demodocus is called to sing. That night the song is of Troy, the quarrel of Odysseus and Achilles, the wooden horse, the fall of the city. Odysseus listens with head bowed, tears running down his cheeks into his cloak. Alcinous notices and stops the song. He asks the stranger gently who he is and why a tale of Greek victory causes such grief. Only then does Odysseus speak his name and begin the long account from the sack of the Cicones to the storm that left him alone on the raft. He tells it plainly, night after night, while the court listens in quiet wonder. When he finishes, the hall remains still for a moment. Then Alcinous promises a ship and crew to carry him home at dawn, with gifts of bronze, gold, and fine cloth to replace what the sea took. Meanwhile, far across the water on Ithaca, time has not stood still. Penelope still sits at her loom each day. The great shroud for Laertes grows a little longer in the sunlight hours, then shorter again by lamplight. The suitors press harder now. 4 years have passed since the trick was first begun. Some have begun to suspect. Antinous and Eurymachus speak openly of forcing a choice. Penelope answers with calm words, promising a decision when the shroud is finished, but her eyes are tired. Telemachus has grown into a young man of 21. The constant presence of the suitors in his house weighs on him daily. Athena comes to him one evening in the guise of old Mentes, a family friend. She urges him to travel, to seek news of his father from Nestor in Pylos and Menelaus in Sparta. A man must act, she says. The gods help those who help themselves. Telemachus feels resolve stir for the first time. He calls an assembly of the Ithacans, the first in 20 years. The suitors are caught off guard. Telemachus stands before the gathered men and speaks clearly. The occupation of his house is a shame. The suitors must leave. The elders murmur agreement, but Antinous blames Penelope's deception and demands she be sent back to her father to choose a husband. The assembly ends in anger. Nothing settled. That night Telemachus prepares a ship in secret with the help of loyal men. Athena sends a fair wind. At dawn he sails without telling his mother he knows she would worry. Penelope learns only later and weeps quietly in her room. But a small hope joins the grief. Telemachus reaches Pylos first. Nestor receives him warmly in his high hall by the sea. The old king sacrifices to Poseidon, feasts the visitor, and tells what he knows. Many Greeks returned safely. Agamemnon was murdered. Menelaus delayed long in Egypt. Of Odysseus there is no certain word. Nestor advises the boy to continue to Sparta. In Sparta, Menelaus and Helen welcome him in their rich palace. Helen recognizes him at once by his resemblance to his father. Menelaus tells of his own long return and of a strange encounter in Egypt with Proteus, the old man of the sea, who revealed that Odysseus still lived, held against his will, on a nymph's island. The news is years old now, but it is the first real hope Telemachus has heard. Back on Scheria, the promised ship is ready. The Phaeacian crew rows through the night, swift and sure. Odysseus sleeps aboard, wrapped in fine blankets. At dawn, they reach Ithaca. The sailors carry the sleeping man ashore, lay him on the sand with all his gifts piled beside him, then depart silently. Poseidon watches from afar and turns the returning ship to stone as it nears home, a warning to the Phaeacians against helping strangers too freely. Odysseus wakes alone on his own shore, the land hidden in mist by Athena. He does not recognize the bay at first. 20 years have changed him, and the place looks different in the grey light. He fears the Phaeacians have left him on some foreign coast. But Athena appears in the form of a young shepherd, then reveals herself. She explains where he is, warns him of the suitors, and advises disguise. Together they hide the treasures in a cave. She touches his face with her wan skin wrinkles, hair greys, clothes become ragged. He is an old beggar now. His first steps will lead him to the hut of the loyal swineherd Eumaeus, where news of home waits and plans can begin. And on the same island, though they do not yet know it, father and son are drawing closer to the same hearth. Odysseus walks slowly up from the hidden bay, staff in hand, body stooped under the beggar's rags Athena has given him. The path winds through olive groves and rocky pastures. Goats scatter at his approach. The air smells of thyme and dry earth, warmed by the afternoon sun. He knows this land, every slope, every spring, but 20 years have blurred the edges of memory. He keeps to the back ways, avoiding farms where someone might recognize the set of his shoulders despite the disguise. By late afternoon, he reaches a clearing high on the hillside. A low stone wall encloses a yard where pigs root in the dirt. 4 fierce dogs rush out barking, teeth bared. Odysseus drops his staff and sits on the ground. Old beggar's wisdom to show no threat. A stocky man hurries from the hut, shouting the dogs down with a familiar voice. Eumaeus, the swineherd. He is aged, beard grey, back a little bent from years of labour, but the same honest eyes. He apologizes for the dogs, helps the stranger up, and leads him inside. The hut is simple. Walls of stacked stone, roof of thatch, a hearth in the centre where a low fire burns. Hams hang from the beams, skins cover the benches. Eumaeus sets out bread, olives, and roasted pork, better food than many free men eat. He pours wine into a wooden cup and sits opposite his guest, asking the usual questions. Where from? What news of the world? Has he perhaps heard of Odysseus? The beggar answers carefully, claims to come from Crete, a warrior once, now reduced by misfortune. He adds that he heard Odysseus was alive, lately among the Thesprotians, preparing to return. Eumaeus listens politely, but shakes his head. Too many wandering men have brought such stories for Penelope's sake, hoping reward. He has stopped believing. Night falls. The fire settles into embers. Eumaeus spreads fresh fleeces on a bench for the stranger and lies down himself near the door, within reach of his staff. Outside, the pigs grunt softly in their pens. Odysseus listens to the familiar sounds of home and feels the long absence more sharply than on any foreign shore. Days pass this way. Odysseus helps with small tasks, carrying water, mending a fence, moving slowly so the disguise holds. Eumaeus speaks freely in the evenings, how the suitors devour the flocks daily, how Penelope holds them off with weary skill, how Telemachus bears the burden alone. The old man's loyalty has not wavered in 20 years. He tends Odysseus's pigs as carefully as on the day his master sailed for Troy. Meanwhile, Telemachus's ship approaches Ithaca from the east. He has left Sparta with new hope from Menelaus's tale and a warning from Helen. The suitors plan ambush on his return. Athena sends a swift wind. The crew beaches the ship in a quiet cove at dusk, away from the main harbour. Telemachus tells his companions to sail onto the city at dawn and report he is still away. He himself will go inland to the swineherd's hut. He needs to check the herds and think before facing the palace. He walks through the dark, guided by starlight and memory. The dogs hear him first and rush out wagging tails this time. Eumaeus welcomes him warmly, stirs the fire, begins preparing a late meal. Telemachus steps inside, travel dust on his cloak, and sees the beggar sitting quietly on the bench. He greets the stranger with courtesy. At that moment, Athena's plan moves forward. She appears unseen and touches Odysseus. The wrinkles smooth, the grey hair darkens, the rags become clean garments. He stands straight and tall. Telemachus leaps back, thinking a god has entered the hut. Odysseus speaks quickly, his own voice, unchanged after 20 years. No god, I am your father. The young man stares, eyes wide. Then tears come. He throws his arms around Odysseus, and they hold each other while Eumaeus looks on, weeping quietly. When words return, Odysseus asks for every detail of the house. How many suitors? Who leads them? What arms they carry? Telemachus answers steadily. He has counted them often. 108 from the islands, plus servants and heralds. They feast nightly, careless of defence. Father and son sit late by the fire. Eumaeus goes out to sleep with the pigs, giving them privacy. Odysseus outlines the plan. He will return to the palace tomorrow as the beggar. Telemachus must say nothing, even if the suitors insult or strike him. Hide the weapons in the hall, spears, shields, swords. Leave only a few for themselves and 2 loyal men, Eumaeus and the cowherd Philoetius. Telemachus listens, nodding. The fire burns low. Outside, the night is quiet, except for the occasional grunt of pigs and the distant hoot of an owl. Father and son speak in low voices, making promises, weighing chances. The hut feels small and safe, a brief island of trust before the storm. At dawn, Telemachus leaves first, walking openly to the palace to show himself returned. Odysseus follows later with Eumaeus, staff tapping the path, rags fluttering. The dogs trot beside them, sensing change. The great hall waits ahead, filled with noise and careless men who believe the house is theirs. But tomorrow an old bow will be brought out, one no suitor has yet managed to string, and the long disorder will begin to end. Morning comes clear over Ithaca. Telemachus walks down from the hills and enters the palace openly, greeting servants and heralds as though nothing unusual is planned. The suitors arrive soon after, filling the hall with their usual noise, laughter, calls for wine, feet scraping on the stone floor. Servants bring bread, meat, and cheese. The day feels like any other to them. Odysseus follows later with Eumaeus, still in rags, staff tapping slowly. The dogs in the courtyard know him now and do not bark. He steps across the threshold he built himself 20 years earlier. The great hall looks smaller than memory. Smoke darkened beams, tables pushed together, benches crowded. The suitors glance at the beggar with mild contempt. One, Antinous, tells a servant to give him scraps and send him on his way. Another, Eurymachus, laughs and offers a wager. Let the old man try the bow if he wants entertainment. Penelope has decided the time has come. She descends from the upper rooms carrying the great bow of Odysseus unstrung, wrapped in cloth, heavy with beeswax at the grip. With it she brings the 12 iron axe heads, each with a ring for the shaft. She sets them in a straight line down the hall, rings aligned. Her voice is steady. Whoever strings the bow and shoots an arrow through all 12 rings may have her as wife and leave with her from this house. The suitors agree readily. They have waited long enough. One by one they try. Leodes, the mildest, goes first. He warms the bow by the fire, rubs fat into the wood, strains until his hands tremble. The string will not reach the notch. Others follow, stronger men, proud hunters. Antinous, Eurymachus, all the leaders. The bow remains unyielding. Sweat beads on their foreheads. Excuses begin. The wood is too old, too stiff from storage. They call for more fat, more time. Telemachus stands watching. He asks to try, more to keep the plan moving than from hope of success. He sets the bow upright, fits the string, and pulls. The notch almost closes once, twice, a third time closer still. Telemachus steps back, saying perhaps the bow is not meant for a younger man today. The hall grows restless. The suitors argue among themselves. Then the beggar speaks from his corner near the door. His voice is low but clear. Let him try. Laughter rises. Antinous snaps that the old tramp has drunk too much and wants to make a fool of himself. Eumaeus and Philoetius, the cowherd, quietly move to the doors and bar them from inside. Penelope speaks again. The stranger has asked politely. Let him have his turn. No harm can come from it. Odysseus takes the bow. His hands, roughened now by disguise, move with familiar ease. He turns it over, checks the wood for cracks, tests the string. The hall falls quieter. He sets the lower tip against his foot, leans forward, and strings it in one smooth motion. The cord seats with a soft twang that echoes off the rafters. He picks up an arrow, fits it, draws. The bow bends like a living thing. He sights down the shaft, releases. The arrow flies straight, passing through every ring with a faint ringing sound as iron touches iron. Silence holds for a heartbeat. Then Odysseus takes a second arrow and turns toward the suitors. Panic erupts. Men leap up, reaching for spears that are no longer on the walls. Telemachus removed them earlier, with help from the loyal herdsman. Odysseus speaks now in his own voice, calm and unmistakable. The long journey is over. The house will be cleaned. Arrows follow quickly. Eurymachus falls next, then others who try to rush the doors or beg for mercy. The hall fills with confusion shouts, overturned tables, feet slipping on spilled wine. Eumaeus and Philoetius fight beside their master with spears taken from the hidden store. Telemachus stands at his father's side, sword in hand. The suitors have no armor, no formation. They are caught completely unprepared. One by one they fall. Some crawl under tables, some plead. Odysseus moves methodically, choosing targets, wasting no shaft. When the arrows are gone, he takes spear and sword. The fighting is brief. Soon the only sounds are heavy breathing and the drip of blood on stone. The servants who sided with the suitors are dealt with last. Melanthius, the treacherous Goatherd, is dragged out and punished. The hall grows quiet again, the air thick with smoke and iron smell. Penelope has remained upstairs through it all. The maids, those still loyal, clean the floor, drag bodies to the courtyard. Odysseus orders a bath drawn, fresh clothes brought. He washes away the beggar's grime, anoints himself, puts on a clean tunic. When he returns to the hall, it is orderly once more. Tables righted, benches in place, torches lit. The long disruption is over. The house breathes easier, as though a weight has lifted after 20 years. But one final test remains, not of strength, but of memory and trust around a secret known only to husband and wife. The hall is clean again. Bodies have been carried out, the floor scrubbed, tables set back in their places, torches burn steadily along the walls. Odysseus sits by the hearth in fresh clothes, hair and beard trimmed by Eurycleia, the old nurse who recognized him first by the scar on his leg. She has told Penelope that the beggar was Odysseus all along, that the suitors are gone, that order has returned, yet Penelope does not come down at once. She appears at last on the stairs, slow and composed. Lamplight catches the pale folds of her gown. She stops halfway and looks across the hall at the man by the fire. He rises to meet her gaze. 20 years have changed them both lines around the eyes, grey in the hair, but the way they stand, the tilt of the head, is unmistakable. Telemachus watches from the side, hopeful and uncertain. Eurycleia stands nearby, hands clasped. Penelope speaks first, voice calm and clear. She thanks the stranger for ridding the house of its trouble, promises rich gifts and safe passage wherever he wishes to go. Odysseus answers quietly. He wants no gifts, only to stay in the home that is his. She studies him a moment longer, then turns to Telemachus and Eurycleia with mild reproach. Why have they deceived her, bringing a stranger into her presence and claiming he is her husband? She orders the old nurse to prepare a bed for the guest outside the bedchamber. Soft fleeces, blankets, a sturdy frame. Odysseus listens without moving. Then he speaks, a note of irritation carefully measured. He asks why she would move the marriage bed that he built himself, the bed no one else could shift. One of its posts is a living olive tree, rooted deep in the ground. He felled the trunk long ago, shaped it smooth, inlaid it with gold, silver, and ivory, stretched oxhide thongs across for the frame, and built the entire chamber around it, walls, door, roof, all so the bed could never be moved. Penelope's face changes. Her knees weaken. She sits suddenly on the steps. Tears come, not loud but steady. She crosses the hall and takes his hands. The words are simple. Only Odysseus could know that secret. No one else saw the making of the bed. No one else was told. The test is over. They embrace quietly. No speeches, no hurried explanations. Telemachus smiles in relief and withdraws with Eurycleia, giving them the hall. The servants finish their tasks and leave. The torches burn lower. Later, they climb the stairs together to the upper chamber. The door still fitted tightly as Odysseus carved it closes behind them. Moonlight comes through high windows, falling across the bed that has waited 20 years, unchanged, immovable. They lie down side by side, speaking softly of small things first, the olive tree still living, the way the sea sounded at night, how Telemachus has grown tall. Then the harder memories, losses, long nights of doubt, the years that felt endless. Words come slowly, without rush. Sleep follows, deep and undisturbed. Morning brings ordinary sounds, birds in the courtyard, servants stirring fires, goats on the hills. Odysseus walks the estate with Eumaeus and Philoetius, checking flocks and fields. Penelope oversees the household as before, but lighter now, the loom set aside. Telemachus joins his father often, learning the land he will one day rule. Laertes, old and frail on his farm, is brought to the palace. Father and son meet in the orchard, tears and quiet laughter shared under the same trees. The news spreads across Ithaca. The king has returned, the suitors are gone, peace holds. Families of the dead suitors gather arms for revenge, but Athena and Zeus intervene. A brief clash ends with oaths sworn on the plain, no more blood. The island settles into its old rhythms, harvests, festivals, ships coming and going in the harbour. Years pass gently. Odysseus makes one final voyage, as Tiresias foretold, carrying an oar inland until someone mistakes it for a winnowing fan. There he plants it and sacrifices to Poseidon, ending the long quarrel. He returns home for good. In the evenings, he and Penelope sit together on the porch overlooking the western sea. The light fades slowly. The waves keep their steady sound. No great storms come again. The house stands solid, the olive tree in the bedchamber still green. The long journey is finished. The reward is simple: quiet days, shared meals, sleep without fear. The home they kept alive through 20 years of absence is whole once more. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the sea continues its ancient motion, carrying other stories toward other shores.